Tonight, Australians to vote on an Indigenous voice to Parliament on Saturday, October 14. We'll hear from campaigners here in Canberra. Also tonight, inflation on the way down, but Australian households still feeling the pinch. A final farewell to Vietnam War hero Lieutenant Colonel Harry Smith. And Australia's Alex de Minaur through to the second round of the US Open. Yurmo, good evening. Adrian Francis with ABC News. The Prime Minister has called the referendum on an Indigenous voice to Parliament, announcing Saturday, October 14 as the date Australians will head to the polls. The announcement lays the foundation for 6 weeks of intense cross-country campaigning as each side of the debate looks to tip voters in their favour. Political reporter Dana Morse begins our coverage from Adelaide.
The finish line for a once-in-a-generation vote is now in sight.
Today I announce that referendum day will be the 14th of October.
But there's still a race to be run.
For Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, this has been a marathon. For all of us, it is now a sprint.
Anthony Albanese joining an exclusive club of Prime Ministers who have dared to try and change the Constitution.
A once-in-a-generation chance to bring our country together.
Announcing in Adelaide, the city which launched the last successful referendum on Indigenous rights.
History is calling us. It is urging us to finish the work of 1967.
The gravity of the moment not lost on campaigners who have spent years on the front line. The ballot paper will look like this, with the question and a box in which voters will need to write either yes or no. To win, the Yes campaign needs a majority of voters nationwide and a majority in at least 4 of the 6 states. Polling day is October 14 and early voting will begin 2 weeks prior.
Hello.
Across the country, pollies crossed party lines to show their support.
We're all here encouraging our constituents, current and previous, to vote yes.
Hitting the train stations and the tram stops, handing out leaflets and talking to people.
Such positivity, such hope that we can actually do things better and differently in the future.
Our story is not finished yet. It's up to all of us to write the next chapter together. And we can start by writing one word: yes.
The Prime Minister has captivated a deeply engaged audience here today. And now the challenge for both campaigns is going to be educating the public on what is at stake. That's what they'll need to do before either of them can hope to win over the voters or the referendum.
I'm not sold yet on either stance.
Yes, absolutely yes, because it's the right thing to do and it's about time people had a voice.
I think they've got enough representation, enough say as it is.
If you don't understand, if you don't know, vote no.
The No campaign marked the announcement in Tasmania, considered to be another swing state in this debate.
Division, division, division. That's basically what this referendum is about. It's been this since the beginning.
Both camps now hitting the road.
Prime Minister, what's next after announcing the date?
October 14. Vote yes.
A message he's hoping to drive home. Dana Morse, ABC News, Adelaide.
With the date for the referendum now set, campaigners here in Canberra are making their views heard. While the yes vote in the ACT seems to be strong, support for the voice is not uniform, especially among First Australians.
Around the fire at the Aboriginal Tent Embassy, the referendum is not a burning issue.
We don't agree to the yes or the no campaign. We're here asserting our rights as sovereign people.
A vote for a nation not recognised at this embassy.
To tell you the truth, I don't even vote in this country. I don't consider myself an Australian citizen. I consider myself Wiradjuri and Gomeroi.
In the shadow of federal parliament, former political sparring partners united for yes.
Well, Gary and I go way back on issues like this. People come together.
I think this issue, as Katie said, is bigger than politics.
As the pollies tried to sweeten the yes vote, grassroots campaigners welcomed the political sugar hit.
More energised knowing that we have a definitive date and we have something to work towards now.
For Ngunnawal woman Auntie Jude Barlow, there's a fear of the status quo.
I just feel that if this doesn't get up, I will never see anything of its like again in my lifetime.
And hope for change.
I believe in Australia. I believe in our ability, like they did in '67, to see what's important for the future of this country.
While the No campaign seems to be focused elsewhere, the Yes campaign will stay on message in the ACT.
This is your chance to be in that history book, or to be a part of history, to change, our highest legal binding document.
But history hasn't caught up to everyone yet.
Have you made your mind up yet?
Oh, no, I have not. I've got no clue about the referendum at all.
Campaigning still to be done. James Viver, ABC News, Canberra.
With the referendum starter's gun now fired, how is each side faring in the eyes of Australian voters? ABC data analyst Casey Briggs looks at what the polling suggests as the campaign enters the home stretch.
Each one of these dots is one of the national voice polls that we're tracking, each of them with its own margin of error. So rather than looking at each individually, we get more information by combining them all into a single polling average. And here is what that looks like. It's a decline for yes support since the beginning of the year. And now an average across all the polls of about 45.3% for yes. That puts no more than 9 points ahead. That's a big gap, but there is a lot of uncertainty and the campaign is about to get a lot more intense. And the focus? People who haven't made up their minds. Here's just one poll from Essential this month. It found about 10% of people genuinely undecided. Then a similar number of people who were leaning softly either way. So in theory, 30% who are convincible. We've got fewer polls of states, but it appears that New South Wales and Victoria have some of the strongest yes support. Queensland and WA the strongest no support. Say, hypothetically, that those states fall those ways. And to be clear, that is a pretty big hypothetical at this point. But it would mean the result comes down to the two smallest states, South Australia and Tasmania. It explains why Yes 23 and the PM have been keen to make a splash in Adelaide, in a state which could prove decisive in the final sprint of the campaign.
Casey Briggs there. So emotions are running high as Australians prepare to vote in the first referendum since 1999. But is the country ready? With his take, here's referendum correspondent Dan Borsha.
The emotion and passion was clear from all leaders on both sides of the debate today. And where they spoke from, South Australia and Tasmania, gave a sense of states that are central, with Western Australia and Queensland the next campaign focus. I've travelled to every state and territory as part of my coverage of the referendum this year, sitting on country with elders who are for, against and undecided about the voice. And I've heard from many Indigenous people across all perspectives who have stepped out of the debate because of the tone and the vitriol they feared. Some have found it confronting, where their identity feels up for debate. Then there have been people across the nation who say they have no idea about the voice and don't know how to vote. This has already been a long debate. Setting the date draws a line in the sand, and given we know many Australians haven't turned their attention to the voice or referendum, the challenge for the campaigns is to cut through and win support for their side and explain why they believe you should write yes or no on your ballot paper.